I think, oh, need one more. Here we are. Okay, Leah, are we going to start?
Sounds good.
All right. It's 6 o'clock. Good evening and welcome. We're excited to have you join us this evening. This forum is presented by the members of the League of Women Voters, the Teton County Library, and our local media, the Jackson Hole News and Guide, Buck Rail, KHOL Radio, and Wildfile. I'm Susan Dong, a League of Women Voters member, and I am tonight's moderator. This is a third of 5 forums, the purpose of which is to provide you, the Teton County voter, with information on the candidates and issues. Our goal is to provide an impartial, elevated environment for meaningful discussion. Participating in tonight's forum are media panelists, Robin Vincent of KHOL Radio. Hi, Robin. Tim Woods of the News and Guide. Welcome, Tim. And Lindsay Vallon from Buck Rail. We've got 2 candidates for the mayor of the town of Jackson, Haley Morton Levinson. Hi, Haley. And Michael Kudar. And the 4 candidates for town council are Devin Beeman, Jim Rooks, Pete Muldoon, and Jessica Chambers. Because the mayor's responsibilities include being a member of Jackson's town council, tonight's forum combines the candidates for mayor and the candidates for town council. Whoever is elected mayor or town council will be addressing and voting on the same issues, so it's important to hear everyone's perspectives. The structure of tonight's forum is as follows. We'll begin with a fun icebreaker question to draw out each candidate's personality. Then our media will start our get down to business questions, where each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer on a rotating basis, so everyone gets a chance to go first. Reed Dornan, a League of Women Voter member, is our timekeeper. Candidates, please make sure your computer is set to gallery view so you can see Reed. Each candidate has a red card or a red item to use once, up to 1 minute. This red card can be used as the candidate sees fit, but it doesn't have to be used. At the end of the questioning phase, candidates will have 2 minutes to summarize and present closing remarks. I want to make it very clear at the outset about the rules for tonight's forum. We recognize that many of the candidates are dealing with deeply complicated issues. Our forum format of only 2-minute responses does not provide time to adequately address these matters. Thus, we'll focus this evening's discussions on perspectives about policy and governance. Personal attacks will not be condoned, entertained, or resolved via this Zoom session. Professional conduct and demeanor are expected of everyone, and I have every confidence in your ability to do so. So without further ado, let's begin. We'll start with the 2 mayoral candidates. Haley, you'll go first, as Robin will ask the icebreaker question.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I'd like to thank all the candidates for joining us this evening. My name is Robin Vincent. I'm the news director at KHOL, Jackson Hole Community Radio. So as our moderator has indicated, we are beginning things with an icebreaker question, and that is, who is your hero and why?
And we'll start with Haley.
Man, everyone else has a few minutes to think of their hero. First off, thank you to everyone for putting on this Zoom forum tonight. I really look forward to having the opportunity to speak with constituents or to constituents and with all of you. I would say my hero, and you can say that this is a little bit dorky, but it's my grandmother on my maternal side. And she is my hero because she was a single mother. She blazed the way for women in her field of education and really taught me at a young age to not take crap from people, to put it bluntly, and to speak my convictions and to lead and to, to support my community. And so for that, I'm very grateful. Her name was Sally Rugg, and I think of her often these days. Thank you.
Terrific. Michael, you next.
Thank you. Thank you again for this opportunity to address these issues. Thanks to everyone who is putting this on. The list is long and plentiful. That's an easy one. I'm here today because of my mother and father. If you don't know, I was adopted at birth, and they found it in their heart to adopt me as a baby and raise me as with their own. Bringing me into their life in Green River, Wyoming, and bringing me up to this beautiful place in Jackson. Teaching me the work ethic of the motel business at a young age, and teaching me the values of Wyoming, of hard work, and the dedication it takes to make it these days. And without them, I don't know where I would be. Honestly, who knows? But they've been influential, they've been leaders, they're very reserved and quiet, but that makes them even more special in my heart. And again, I can't thank them enough, and my family. So easy one. But thanks again for everyone participating. I look forward to a great discussion this evening.
Thank you. Devin? Oh, you're on mute. There you are. No.
I'll take out my AirPods. Did that work?
Oh, now it's perfect.
Sorry about that. These minutes are precious. I'll be quick then. My hero is my mom. You all know she passed away a few years ago, and she raised me to be the woman that I am today and to have the confidence to go out and do things like this, like run for public office and get out of my comfort zone. She would always tell me, say yes, Devin, say yes. Like, don't miss an opportunity. So she also taught me grit and determination, and I think about her every day. I miss her dearly. And throughout this campaign process, there has been so many times that I could wish I could pick up the phone and call her and tell her about everything that's going on. She's absolutely my hero.
Great. Jim Rooks.
Well, I love this question. I appreciate this question. It gives me a chance to show some of my heroes. Like everyone else, my family is full of heroes, multiple generations. My mom, my dad, who passed away far too soon. But I happen to have this photo of Bill McIntosh. And for those of you who know Bill was an athletic director and a coach and a teacher at Jackson Hole High School for about 40 years. The high school soccer, football, track stadium is named the William T. McIntosh Stadium. And it was funny, like before I go on these events, I always just look at my family. But Fred and Jeannie Stair, two other heroes of mine, they are working with me and local artist Ben Roth to make sure that there's a proper welcome for Bill McIntosh at the stadium. Right now, the scoreboard has his name, but there's no official welcome area. So we've been working for a couple months now to design, build, and create a welcome to William T. McIntosh Stadium. Bill passed away about 6 months ago, and we think it's really a poignant time to honor a community hero. Thank you.
Great. Pete?
Thanks, Susan. My hero is a friend. I won't name her, but I think she'll probably know who she is. And she's somebody who has helped me immensely over the years. I didn't get a whole lot of primary or high school education and was a college dropout, and had taught myself a lot of things, and I thought I knew a lot of things. And this woman has taught me so much. She's always held me accountable, and tells me what I need to hear, whether I want to hear it or not. And I can't really say how valuable that is. And so, yeah, she's my hero.
Great. And Jessica?
Thanks to everybody, as usual. I'm going to be completely embarrassed because my husband is in the other room watching this. But I'd say he is my absolute hero. After my mom died, which is another one of my heroes, he kind of jumped in to this situation with little boys that had just lost their mother. And he just got in, rolled his sleeves up, and he has been one of the most phenomenal role models for my brothers, but then also for me. He has so much, he puts so much into self-growth and learning and teaching. He's a 5th grade teacher, and all I ever have to do when I'm in the schools is mention Mr. Chambers, and it automatically gets me, I mean, points upon points upon points. And I think, you know, as somewhat of a public figure, people know me around town, but he gets called on the street a lot, you know, because he was someone's 5th grade teacher. So he really is my role model, and I'm so happy that he is in my life.
Great. We're all of us are so fortunate to have these heroes in our lives, and it's great that we can acknowledge them. All right. We appreciate that insight into each one of you. Now we're going to go to our get down to business questions, and Robin's going to ask the first one, and Michael Kudar will be the person to answer first.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. We know cases of COVID-19 are surging in Teton County, and we're in a more dire place than we were in the spring or the summer. The virus has spread to vulnerable members of our community. That's caused a record number of COVID hospitalizations. Moreover, Dr. Paul Beaupre, CEO of St. John's Health, told me on Sunday that more than 20 hospital staffers were under quarantine orders. These factors are threatening Jackson's limited medical infrastructure. Meanwhile, travelers continue to pour into the valley like it's July, not October. Is it time for another shutdown? Tell us why or why not.
No, it's not the time for a shutdown. The last shutdown cost this community huge. It did curb the coronavirus, if you want to believe that. And I think it did. I don't think masks were put in order quick enough, but this is an education thing. This is a self thing. This evening, when you go home and you go to bed and you look at your kids, you look at your friends and family, it's time to say, hey, we've got issues, we got problems. This virus isn't going anywhere soon. There's no quick fix to it. And it's time for the community to step it up. It's time for us to realize that we have to do better. We've got to do more. We've got to listen, and we've got to stop fighting about this thing. We've got to keep our businesses up and going, and they have got to make the choice of how they're going to best keep them going and operating. We need to listen to those businesses, and we need to listen to the restaurants, and we need to listen, and our government needs to play a role in that. They can't be dictating whether we're open or closed. I know those are tough and difficult decisions, but that's why we're elected to these posts. So education, communication. The hospital has done an amazing job. Dr. Riddell has done the best he can. I know he takes a lot of arrows, but he's doing the best he can. And he's, I hope, listening to as many other doctors in the state. And he was listening to the governor and what they're trying to do. They want to keep Wyoming open, but you know, we've got to take precautions and we've got to be safe, and we've got to protect those who are high at risk. That's what it comes down to. And with our senior center now having that one person test positive after being tested almost 2-3 times, we've got to just, this thing is bad and it's not going anywhere. So please, everyone, be self-aware, take the extra caution. Maybe we need to be 8 feet, 10 feet from one another. Maybe we need to wash and clean our masks, do the little things that are going to help keep this virus at bay. And thank you for the question, Robin.
Thank you. Devin, you're next.
Thank you. I do not believe that another shutdown is in order at this moment, but I do believe that we have got to be vigilant with our efforts to slow the spread of it. It's interesting because I took a RV trip to the Oregon coast with my family last week. We just decided to get out of town. It was awesome. Never had to use a public restroom, but everywhere I did go inside in all of Idaho and all of Oregon, they were saying you even have to wear the mask correctly throughout the whole state. So not only did their signs say you have to wear the mask, but there's no pulling it down, there's no pulling it up. And I'd love to actually see that step. If our health officials say masks are what we need, then wear them properly. I am concerned about businesses going through another shutdown. We are very fortunate in our community that we have such amazing people here that we went to the toy store and we called and we said, drop us off a puzzle outside, or we were able to limp these small mom and pop shops alone. And my fear is that they won't survive another time when they close their doors. That's what I've heard from a lot of them. So I think that we have to adhere to our health guidelines. We have to hold each other accountable, which means that if I see somebody doing something they shouldn't do, it's on all of us to say something about it and hold our community responsible for the health of everyone else. The schools have done a fantastic job with keeping the kids healthy. I was nervous about them going back, but it's really been a positive experience with my son. So we just have to keep up the hard work, even though we are all quarantined or not, we're pandemic fatigued, you know, keep up with it and do our best and hold each other accountable. Thanks.
Thank you. Jim, you're next.
Well, I didn't realize we ever had a shutdown. I thought we had a very balanced approach on a local, county, and even a state level to some degree. I applaud our elected officials for taking that stand and prioritizing the health and safety of our community above all other things during a very uncertain time. St. John's Hospital is extraordinary. St. John's Health, I feel like I owe my life to that organization, the doctors, the nurses, the first responders. I just thank them so much for what they're doing. I think we need the continuation of the balanced measures that we've had in the past several months. I think it starts with personal responsibility. I think I finally found my University of Wyoming masks that fit my chubby face perfectly, and I can function with those. I think it's about, as Devin said, holding ourselves and one another responsible. And if you consider mask wearing and social distancing and a little bit less social activity to be a sacrifice, I've been talking with some of my friends who struggle with some of that. And I think it's important to say, who are we sacrificing for? What are you making that sacrifice for? Your own well-being, your family's health and safety, but the schools, the kids. If we don't do this correctly, then school's going to get canceled again. And we have 3,500 kids who can't socialize, who can't learn, who struggle, and especially disadvantaged populations more than any other. I think we look at the elderly, we look at the most vulnerable. So I think it's not a matter of just sacrificing your personal constitutional rights, as some people think. It's a matter of saying we're sacrificing for the betterment of the common good. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Pete, your turn.
Thanks. I think the correct answer here is for us to just admit that we don't know that, and what we need to do is rely on our public health officials and the epidemiologists and our public health department, who are going to give us guidance. And I think from the beginning of this pandemic, we were out in front of it. We were out in front of the state, but the way that we did that and the way that we were successful was that we did not try to make those decisions. We didn't say a pandemic or a closure of certain businesses will be wrong because it will have this effect on the economy or something. What we did was we listened to our experts, and then we went and backed them up. When the state told us no, or told our experts no, when they wanted a public health order, to do some closures, we said, we'll step in and do it. And that should be our response as elected officials, is not to pretend that we are epidemiologists or public health experts, but to listen to the public health experts and to support their decisions and back them up if we have to. It is, of course, important for us all to do our parts, but as many of you have mentioned, it's been a really hard year. 2020 has been very difficult. We are all fatigued. We are all stressed. We are all on edge. And it's a lot to ask people, I think, at this moment. We should ask them, but it's a lot to expect them to be perfect. And it's a lot to expect to get perfect compliance. And I think there will come a point, and this is my guess, I think this should be left up to the public health officials, when we're going to have to make some decisions to remove some of those temptations that people are struggling with. And I know we struggled, we did everything we could to support small businesses in this community during the pandemic. Of course, that's important to all of us, but what's really important are the lives of the people in our community, and that has to come first.
Great. Jessica?
I have to say that I am a big supporter of science. And I think that, similar to what Mayor Muldoon just said, we have experts and people advising us on how to move forward. And I think that, yes, we need to take the advice of people that are more knowledgeable than we are. But, you know, that's even coming from economists as well, that we need to make sure first and foremost that we don't have a rapid or a disastrous spread of this, especially here in Jackson. We have limited beds at the hospital. If things get out of control, the entire economy suffers greater than if we were to keep it open. And so this is a balance. It's not a matter of, you know, mom and pop shops going under. It's a matter of our hospital being able to continue to serve the populations that it needs to serve. And on that note, our essential workforce, we have, they're mostly low-wage workers, and that falls mostly on Latinx populations, and of those, it's predominantly women. And so I think that we need to make sure that we take every measure possible to keep those people safe who are continuing to make our economy run, and limit their exposure. It's what it comes down to is making sure that the entire community gets through this. And it's going to be a concerted effort among everybody, because it's demonstrating how interconnected we really truly are. If we didn't know that before with our housing situations and other situations, COVID has definitely indicated how interconnected we all are, and we need to work together in order to make sure that we all get through this.
Thank you. Haley?
Thank you. You know, early on in the pandemic, I and the council emphasized the need for us to rely on our healthcare professionals. We looked to public health, to Dr. Riddell, Dr. Beaupre, and many others in the community, signaling us and giving us their input, because they are the experts. I am not. And I think that that was a really good thing for our community to do. And I think that was really strong leadership from the town and county. And another thing that I found interesting during that time was the collaboration that our health department had and still has with other communities like us, for example, Park City. And because we were able to have that dialogue and get out in front of this, we fared far better than some of our other ski resort communities. And I'm grateful for that. I think that we've done a very good job since then in working as a community to make sure that we're keeping our cases down. I am concerned with this recent uptick. And again, I'm relying on our healthcare professionals. I think things that are different now from March is that we have a lot more information. We have more access to testing. The contact tracing has been ramped up. And so those are all things that make me feel much better than I did in March, and make me feel that the reason we haven't called for a more severe measures at this time is because we have those things in place. Again, I will rely on our healthcare professionals, And, you know, when they give us the recommendations of not meeting, of not having barbecues, of not getting together with friends, even if they're outside, or even if you feel that the proper precautions are being taken, it's still putting yourself at risk. So I would encourage the whole community to think about that. For example, I haven't really been to anything because I have a lot of people that rely on me to care for them. So I saw the stop sign. Thank you. Thank you, Reed.
Thank you. The second question will come from Lindsay. And Devin will be first.
Okay, hi everybody. I wanted to cover the topic of the general penny. 54% of respondents in a recent Jackson Hole Chamber of Commerce survey responded that they will not vote for the general penny, their main reason being that the allocation of the revenue is unclear. Who supports the tax? Who opposes the tax? And how will you reduce spending if the tax is not passed?
The seventh penny. I'm lucky I get to go up first on this one because I have a strong opinion about it now. Throughout this whole campaigning process, I have really made the effort to do my research and fully understand every topic before I take a hard stance on it. And this was one of those circumstances. I went over the town budget. I went over the county budget. I met with the people. I don't claim to understand them fully, but I understand enough that we need this money right now, because where is it going to come from at this point? And it's the first services that would get cut that I learned are not the easy ones. They would be things like at the community counseling center, when I met with them, if their budget gets cut, it's the first thing to go is the person in the middle of the night that somebody in, you know, extreme crisis calls and needs help in the middle of the night, and there's no one at the end of the line. So these programs and services that are jointly funded and solely funded, they need to be able to plan long term, and they don't have that capability right now. I don't want to see us become more reliant on sales tax revenue. I'd love to explore other options when I'm in office. But for right now, I think that this is kind of the kick in the pants that we need to get through what's going to happen these next few years. And I support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim, you're next.
It was one of the most difficult parts of voting. I voted. I encourage everyone to vote. Early voting's open. Downstairs county clerk office. It makes it so nice and expedient. And that was the one issue that I spent a few minutes just really struggling with it. But I voted for it. I voted for it. And some of my fiscally conservative friends are not very happy with me about that. But I have 7 reasons. My dad said the reason God gave you 5 fingers, you better have 5 reasons to support anything that you do. And so I have 7. I understand, though, I share the same concerns about an unclear allocation of what's estimated to be about $16 million. And while we cannot legally earmark those funds, like the SPET tax and some of the other taxes we have, I think it's very important to note that the town right now is operating. They made significant budget cuts during the last quarter of funding year 19. As we go into funding year 20, we have approximately a $5 million deficit day one, walking into that circumstance. And so the question is, if we tighten our belt on those things, and I think tightening the belt is appropriate on certain levels, but as Devin stated, you know, it's health, human services, fire, EMS. We had the fire station. When they dug into that building, they found out that it wasn't as structurally stable as they intended. And as I mentioned in a forum last week, I'm just not willing to compromise health, human services, emergency first responder, fire, EMS, some of those organizations. And the last one is all of us tomorrow, I think, will be taking part in a candidates forum with regards to water. And we have serious water issues in this valley, from the north end to the south end at Hoback. And to mitigate and fix and offset some of those really alarming issues, we're going to need additional special funds. Thank you.
Thank you. Pete?
Yeah, I do support it. I've supported it for quite some time now. You know, back in, I think, January, we had our council retreat. We went through all of the potential revenue sources and then looked and tried to match those up with the priorities that the community had at the time before the pandemic, before we needed to make budget cuts. And it became apparent that really the general penny was the only revenue option that would allow us to meet our community goals, especially spelled out in the comp plan. So it's kind of a no-brainer. And I understand the concern about the unclear allocation of funds. You know, how will we spend that money? But the truth is that that's what elections are for. We can't tie future councils, and we need to be able to act nimbly and allow the folks who live here, say 20 years from now, if the tax is still around, or next year, who are going to vote in the elections, or this November, who are voting in the elections, to make those decisions through their representative government. So, I would focus more on the needs of the community, and many of you who have spoken already have mentioned a lot of those. We can't accomplish those goals if we don't have this, even if we get our economy back fully on track post-pandemic. In the meantime, we've burned quite a ways through our reserves. We need to fill those back up. This is essential. I mean, this is not. I mean, Devin's absolutely right. We can't be cutting the counseling center budget. And I'm not going to do that. I guess I would look first to, it's going to be snow plowing, the police department, some of our larger departments. But we're going to have some real sacrifices that we're going to have to make if this tax doesn't pass. We simply cannot fund our government at the current levels of service and meet our community goals if we don't pass this. So I would encourage everybody to please vote for the 7th cent in November or today.
Thank you. Jessica?
I am 100% in support of the 1%, the 7 cent sales tax for all of the reasons that have already been expressed. I know over the course of the last 4 years, from paying attention to the budget and running for office multiple times, that the budget has been getting cut. And right now, the funds that we have are to cover the core services. So we don't have any ability to address any sort of other altruistic goals or growth goals as far as making our community better. Tying this back into COVID, we, towns and counties, are going to be responsible for getting us through and then also recovering from the effects of COVID. And we're going to have the least amount of money to do it. That's, further compounds our system. As I talked about, the people that are most affected by COVID are essential workers. There are hourly wage workers. There are low income wage workers, which are typically Latinx community, like I said before, women. And so at the same time, we're having these communities that rely so heavily on our human service organizations, having issues with earnings, sickness, health, et cetera. And then we're going to have no money to put towards the human service organizations that provide services to the more marginalized, more vulnerable populations. And so to me, this is a no-brainer. It would be irresponsible of us to not do it. And I think for some people, they need to think beyond themselves and understand that, as Mayor Muldoon said, we are in the midst of an election right now. And if we vote for people, we vote for them because we trust them to represent us, but also to lead us. And there is a balance between trust and giving us the ability to make decisions and be nimble. And so I just ask that voters consider you're voting for us because you trust us to do the right thing.
Thank you. Haley, it's your turn.
Thank you. I voted today and I voted in favor of it. And I have been in favor of the general penny. And a few reasons why is because looking at our budget back in January, we as council decided to ask the county and then ultimately the voters to decide on this because we have an eye on the future. We have future goals for Jackson that our community has been asking for. This includes affordable housing, how to manage growth, transportation issues, water quality, and those things are funded kind of right now. But when we do, we have to take it away from other areas. And so for me, those are really important topics and issues for our community. A few other reasons why I'm voting in favor of this general penny is because it's the only option we have as a community of tax that we don't pay 100% of. This is the only way that we have visitors pay part of their, or part into it as well. And that's important to me because other tax options, including property tax, are paid solely by us. And then I would also say, you know, yes, at this time, the funds may not be allocated or earmarked, but we could say that of anything in the general fund. And, you know, we have a very open and transparent budget process. It happens every year. Every 2 weeks, we have all of our spending approved and printed, approved by council. And so I would say, you know, it's up to the voters to hold the electeds accountable, and they have over the years. And so I feel confident that we can have this tax and put it to good use.
Thank you. Michael?
Thank you. I'm glad this question's asked because I'm the only one that stands on this and stands against it. You know, this council during a pandemic, you know, gave themselves a raise, a 34% raise. And I'm sorry, but I have some huge heartburn over that. They had a meeting or they had their conference or the thing in January together, and they said this tax was the only tax they could do. That's not true. It's not true at all. There's other things they could tax. They could use the spent tax, which we could have doubled, and that could have been specific to projects that is on this wish list. 30 some things on here that are good, but you're going to spread that 7 million out over all those. That doesn't solve the solution. That doesn't solve the problem. It has consequences, unintentional consequences. And the community is electing us leaders, and you guys all said it, because we have to make these tough decisions. And we've allowed this government to grow and grow over the last 10 years over this boom. And not once was the budget cut. It just kept growing and growing. So guess what? The next 2 years, we have to shrink it back down. You guys gave yourself a raise. Well, it's time to shrink the government back down. It's time to talk to our staff and drill it all down. It's time to think about, you know, taxing people more while giving themselves raises. Nah, give back that raise. Really? You need a raise? Is that why you guys flip-flop seats? So, I mean, there's some things going on here. You're not as transparent as you say. There are other solutions. There are other ideas. But we're going to have to not have this tax, because if we have it, it will never go away. We'll have it forever. And you'll be able to spend it on whatever you want or whatever we want. But if it does pass and that's the people's will, the democracy that they choose to have it, for me, it will go to health and human services, number one, and it'll go to savings. We will start to save money in this town. We will start to plan better for housing, transportation, and the environment. And that's how I see it. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I saw Haley's red card. So you have a minute, Haley.
1 minute. Okay. A few things. Michael mentioned that we would be able to use the SPET tax. Some of the things he just mentioned would not be, we could not use the SPET tax for that funding. Council decided on the raise because it is something that you only get if you are then elected. And then we ultimately postponed it. So that did not happen this year, and it will happen in fiscal year 2022 for whoever is elected, including Michael. And then a few other things. He also mentioned the health and human services. That is where I would see this general penny going, and the SPET tax or any other tax would not be able to go to that. Oh, and this was the other one. Luckily, over the last 10 years, council has done a very good job of saving. It was called our rainy day fund or our general fund, and we have been able to use half of it, 4.7 million, for the emergency that we're currently in. So I think that we've done a good job of that. And I wouldn't necessarily want to, I definitely, can I keep going, Reed, for a moment?
Finish your statement.
Okay, I would just say I would not look at this tax as a savings option, rather to put it to use to the future of our community and our community goals.
Thank you. The next question comes from Tim, and Jim, you will answer first.
Sorry, I needed to unmute myself. Let me get back to my question here. So Northern South Park, there's been a lot of talk about what the community wants to see in Northern South Park, a variety of housing types, daycares, parks, transportation, etc. But Northern South Park is not public land. It's private land owned by the Gill and Lockhart families. What are your priorities for neighborhood planning effort there? And how do you think the desires of the community and landowners in the area should be balanced?
I think this is the preeminent question of our time. When we look at what's going on in our valley right now, obviously COVID and water and housing and transportation. And it seems to me that all of those manifest in our conversations about Northern South Park. I'm proud to say I was the only person at least present in the County Commission's chambers during about 14 hours of deliberations over the past couple of weeks. I understand the difficulty associated with the votes that came through. I can tell you that I think history matters. That was my ad in the News and Guide today. It means a lot. The Gill family is an extraordinary family. The Lockharts, the Porters, that land's there and open and beautiful and protected for a reason. And that reason is those families' dedication to that open space. Now that we see a 70+ acre development going on in there, I think that I've always said the proposal was not perfect. No proposal is perfect, but it was pretty incredible. And when we look at 30 to 40 gifted habitat lots, if we looked at the 50 additional lots that were going to be gifted to the Housing Trust, if we looked at the totality of 204 lots and townhomes and single family homes as well, and not just incredibly dense, 8 plexes and 12 plexes, some of these affordable attainable housing options really were going to meet the needs of a variety. I thought we needed to have school acreage. I thought we needed to protect the riparian zone. I thought it was a positive development to suggest that the Gills would take on wastewater and sewer treatment on or near that property. I appreciated Arn Jorgensen and other people, Mark Newcomb, asking for perhaps a conservation easement in exchange. I sure hope the Gills don't walk away from the table. I don't think they will. They've been dedicated to this community for over a century. I think I support complete neighborhoods. I support that process, and I hope it's fast, expedient, and fair. And I'd like to see Northern South Park developed in that manner. If not there, then where? Thank you.
Thank you. Pete, you're next.
Thanks, Susan. I guess to answer the question of if not there, then where, I agree. I think we should move forward with Northern South Park, but the other where is in town, and in town is, and will remain for some time, our best option for adding workforce housing. We rezoned most of the town of Jackson during my term and added a lot of density, because what we know works is putting people near where they work, allowing them to walk to work rather than drive. We know that works, and the concern for me is that if we don't do a good project or a good development at Northern South Park, we are going to make it very difficult to get that infill in town, because greenfield development is really easy to do. It's really cheap. So we're going, that's the alternative. And so we need to make sure that we do this right, because we know that we're going to be sacrificing some of that infill in town that we've been trying to get for years. I think we've got to look outside the box here. I remember at the first one of these debates, Devin and I found ourselves in agreement about the parking and how we've got to address parking within there. We've got to make sure that that this is a dense, bikeable neighborhood where we don't need to have somebody get into a car to drive every single place that they need to go. Fundamentally, we need to look at this as, how can we make this a development this neighborhood be something we're proud of and we're glad that we did 20 or 30 years from now. And that means thinking outside the box. You know, the zoning that was proposed was, I think, auto urban residential, and that is zoning that's based around getting in a car and driving everywhere we go. We know we can't do that. We look at our traffic that we have today, it is out of control. And we really don't have a lot of options for solving that, short of making sure that people aren't driving everywhere they have to go. So that's really important. We also need to make sure that this development is going to serve the workforce primarily, because we've got really this one big shot after the town to meet those goals of making sure that the people who live in our community work in our community. So I'm supportive of it. I hope that we can get something done, but what's most important is that we do it right. And I think that we're now on the road to doing that.
Thank you. Jessica?
I will say that I am 100% in favor of building housing at Northern South Park. What I really liked during the public comments during the commission meeting was someone said that you can only say yes once. You can say no many times, but you can only say yes once. And I think given our complicated history with building workforce housing, this is a project that we want to make sure that we get absolutely right, because we don't get another shot at it. I don't think that we have had a large enough focus on rentals and multifamily units, because that's the thing that our community is most in need of. We need housing for our most vulnerable populations. That there's nothing that caters to that portion of AMI. And so I'd like to see more consideration for that. Single family homes, that's just not a way that's going to move us into the future. It's also, I think single family homes just perpetuate inequality and, separating wealth from people that don't have wealth. And the more that we do that, the more that we zone for that, the greater the divide is between our wealthy people and our poor people, lower socioeconomic strata. And I personally don't want to see that. And the Brookings Institute had put out a study that talked about when you have extremely stringent housing rules and regulations, you end up with a wealthier community, because people prefer to live and reside alongside people that are like them, especially in the same tax bracket. I think if we looked back over the history of Jackson, we've ended up here due to our zoning, due to our housing decisions. And I want to make sure that this community stays insulated from becoming, a playground or an investment for uber wealthy people.
Thank you. Haley?
Thank you. I am definitely in support of housing in Northern South Park. And in fact, last December, the town council and the county commission changed the comp plan to highlight and emphasize that importance. I supported and will continue to support the neighborhood plan. I think when I think about this area, I kind of think about Cottonwood. And I think about how, wow, wouldn't this be such a great influx of workforce housing and a workforce housing community like Cottonwood has been. But then I think about the next 20 years or the next generation. And I think about, what does Cottonwood look like right now? What are the prices those homes are selling for? Are they obtainable for the workforce right now? Maybe, but I'd say they're probably slipping away. And so that's the sort of thing that I think about and really want to make sure that we get right. As far as town is concerned, some of the more important issues to me are the infrastructure. If this part of the community ever became part of town, we'd obviously want to look at how it's going to hook up to water and sewer, and how we can use best practices to make sure that some of those water concerns are addressed. When you think about 74 acres, you can add a lot of families, a lot of homes, and a lot of impact. And that's really exciting, but it also just needs to be planned very well and with the long term in mind. And so I think that we will get that with the with the neighborhood plan, and I look forward to working through that process in a quick manner, because I do recognize the importance time is for all of our community, not just the landowners, but those who are looking for homes.
Thank you. Michael?
Yeah, I mean, obviously this is the right spot. The Gills and both the Lockharts have been through this process back in 2003. The community voted down that development. I was hugely involved in it as a planning commissioner at the time, and it was one of the biggest mistakes this community ever made. And here we are today talking about the same piece of property now with less homes, less lots, and everything involved. So, I support a complete neighborhood as long as the community completely listens and the people want housing. I think that's pretty obvious. But the plan on place was 90 homes, deed restricted, 40 lots from Habitat and 50 from the Housing Trust. So the vice mayor just mentioned that, they wrote a letter to the county that, that they had no surely for water and sewer connection. So, I mean, you supported that, Vice Mayor. So I'm having a hard time understanding. You say one thing, but you're not supportive in another. So, I mean, we all support housing, deed restricted, affordable. We all want this. We have 3,000 people, guys. That's sink in tonight when you go home. 3,000 people looking for housing in this community. That is huge. And we have to really start thinking outside the box. And we need to start thinking about the consequences if we don't take this opportunity and execute. So how do we do that? We've got to make it more dense, all right? We've got to think about density. We've got to think about maybe some social housing districts. If the Gills and Lockharts will think about that. Thank you for the 30-second remind. And, it's time to really get outside our box. The mayor said it. I'm glad he said it. And we've really got to come to the table with solutions for these lands. We got to come to the Gills and sit down with them and be like, hey, what can we do different? How dense can we get? We need another Hidden Hollow. Okay, we need those kind of developments for people. So I'm gonna let the red Jim Brooks go for it. Thank you.
Go ahead, Jim, you have a minute.
Thank you so much. I think it's so important. So I'm going to use my red card, which is Jack Hyler's That's the Way It Was in Jackson Hole. So first of all, I don't think we need to be looking at something that we feel good about 20 or 30 years down the road. We need to be looking at something that we feel good about 100 years down the road. Zoning for density in the town, I find ironic because the mayor stated that his number one concern about Jackson is seeing these massive homes being developed in the town of Jackson. And yet that's a direct manifestation, albeit perhaps an unintentional consequence of the additional density bonuses for all lots in town. Not everybody in town wants to live next to a 12-plex or 14-plex, as we saw on West Kelly and that contentious debate. Certainly in certain areas, I support that, but saying the entire town needs to become extraordinarily dense, I don't support it. Secondly, or thirdly, the alternative. There are alternatives. It's not the only chance to say yes. Processes have multiple different thresholds within them. If we say no to the Gills and the Lockharts in this, we're saying no to schools, we're saying no to the hospital, we're saying no to conservation, we're saying no to private market-based water treatment. 408 units between the Gills and the Lockharts, right? Without any additional taxes. The middle class is going to get taxed out of this town if we think that the totality of housing needs to be solved by the tax base. I support the Housing Authority and the Housing Trust and Habitat. They do amazing work, but this is a rare opportunity when we can get additional support from that free market that we talk about so much. And finally, I think we look at what's underneath this is a massive disconnect between the town and the county. It's the
Jim,
county.
you'll have to stop. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
We can't forget Devin. Devin has an idea too, so please, Devin.
No more red cards for a minute, right? I absolutely support Northern South Park. I thank the Gill family for going through this process because it could so easily just be turned into another golf resort or large acre tracts of land that second homeowners would come in and snatch up in a heartbeat. We're seeing that they would do it today. So I truly believe that our community and our government will get there on this one. I think they're doing all the right steps to get to the right place and asking the right questions. I'll eat my shoe if we don't get there to the finish line on this one. I get 2 minutes, don't I? That's only like 30 seconds. Am I that slow? Anyway, sorry, y'all probably can't see what she's doing, but I absolutely support it. I think what complete neighborhoods are super important. You need to be able to walk to work. You need to be able to walk to the grocery store. Are there people that would sacrifice having 2 vehicles in their family to only maybe have one and have one parking space in Northern South Park? I think there are. I think that to not have to spend that big portion of their life commuting, they give up a vehicle. So there were other points brought up about, the wastewater, things like, sewer, all that. Those are all just really important things that we have to get to the right spot on. And I don't think anybody's dragging their feet on this. I think we all want to get there. I'll support it however I can as a town councilwoman, and see us get to a place where the community feels good about it and the Gills feel good about it. And we can get workforce housing in the ground right now, because that's what we need. Thanks.
I'm sorry, you did get 2 minutes. I thought you had held up a red card. You did get 2 minutes and I gave it to you, okay? I
So
gave you a
Michael-
minute and then I gave you another minute.
Michael, did you have a red card?
Yes, I definitely want to use my red card and talk some more on this.
Okay.
This council too has had a chance in down south in Hog Island, and we had 155 private workforce projects squashed. And the water and sewer, the town said no to the best environmental solution on water and sewer, and the Gills asked for Connect, and the town just don't count on the town doing it with your current electeds and the current people running for office, because it's not going to happen. They've said it, the mayor said it, and that's just not right. That's not how we partner. It's not how we work together as a community. It's not right. And is the Gills who gave us no cost easements for the town of Jackson's easement right through their property for the water line. So let's think about what this family's done. Let's think about what this family has sacrificed, how long they've been here, living through the Depression like my family, like the Rooks' family. This isn't free. This is hard. They sacrificed way back when. Now that they have this and this community thinks that they're just gonna make millions and millions and laugh away the bank, no. There are death taxes coming up on this property. And if someone passes away, that's gone. And then we have nothing. Then we do have 35-acre lots and we have no housing solution. So community needs to be educated and understand these things. And please listen to those who know and listen to what's really going on. Educate yourself. So thank you. Appreciate it.
We'll go on to the next question, which is going to be asked by Robin, and Pete will answer first.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. My next question is meant to advance community dialogue, so I will warn candidates that if your response devolves into a personal attack, we'll move to the next person. Sexual assault allegations against the mayor that were recently made public by a conservative activist have sparked some important conversations. One is about the barriers survivors face when it comes to reporting sexual assault. What do you think the biggest barriers are, and how will you address them?
Well, thanks for the question, Robin. I think this is an important conversation. Victims want to feel safe again. I think they want their experiences to be understood. They want to be heard. They want and need support and help from all of us. They want and deserve justice. And none of those things can happen unless they're believed. This is a conversation that we have to have. I think it's unfortunate that we're having this conversation in the context of one of the extremely rare cases where an accusation was false. That shouldn't be the narrative here, but it's still the conversation we have to have. We have a huge problem with sexual assault in this country and in our community, and people across the gender spectrum are horribly impacted by this every single day, with repercussions that continue across lifetimes and generations and affect each and every one of us. That problem should be our priority. Our society and culture does not have a problem with false accusations, which are extremely rare. We have a problem with sexual assault. I personally know the importance of just being believed and how difficult it is to even admit what somebody did to you in order to be able to seek help. I know firsthand the shame that comes with that and how incredibly difficult it is to even be able to talk about it. Our first response has to be to listen. And I need to learn to listen better. We need a police culture that understands that actively helps to seek justice for victims. We need human services and mental health support that will give people an opportunity to survive these crimes. Someone recently asked me whether my experience with an extremely rare false accusation would diminish my support for changing our culture and tackling the problems of sexual assault. It will not. This is an intensely personal issue. It was for me long before I was falsely accused, and nothing, including the sheriff's department breaking the law, is going to change that. It's made me more determined than ever to fix our broken system. We have to make this, our criminal justice system, work for people who are victims and who have been, who are the victims of sexual assaults.
Thank you. Jessica?
Thanks. I'm not really sure where to begin here. The situation that unraveled or occurred in the last week is definitely not one that removed barriers for victims of sexual assault to come forward. An alleged victim's report was taken and weaponized. It was used as a campaign tool in some cases by people who've never talked about this issue in the past. That to me was incredibly problematic. I think a lot of people, a lot of men are learning about this. And when you learn about something, you should listen, talk less, listen more. And I think, that's been the case. That's been a big barrier for victims of sexual assault for a long time, is that people talk over them. They don't listen. And so I think that especially our male electeds, you need to listen. Secondly, as a victim of sexual assault who is involved in a case right now with a doctor that abused his patients, I was one of his patients. I spoke out. I talked to my attorney, I talked to a reporter, I talked to members of the New York District Attorney's Office, as well as the FBI. I've had to recount my story multiple times. There is a justice system, and we have got to allow the justice system to do its work. Is it always fair? No, I know that firsthand. But we cannot undermine the justice system in any way, shape, or form. It does not help victims. It does not help alleged perpetrators. We cannot fix the system for victims by dismantling the system for other people. And that was one of the more upsetting things that happened this week, was watching people just lash out and make calls for no due process. This situation was just obscene to me.
Thank you. Haley, please.
I'm here. There's obviously a lot of layers to this, and I think that issues of sexual assault in our country and obviously in our community are coming to a head. And what I've seen over the last week in this community does not give me, I don't feel good about what has happened on a lot of levels. I think who really loses here are the victims. And ultimately what should be happening is that they should feel safe. Any victim should feel safe to come forward to provide their story. And that's number one. When they provide their story, they should also feel safe that their story is not used in a way that they aren't asking for it to be used. And I think society in general has a lot of reckoning to do with this issue, because it's clear that people don't feel safe still. I know many assault victims who have never shared their story, and they never will. And these sort of things, these what has happened this last week in the community doesn't encourage them to do so. As far as making headway or making progress on it, it starts in a community. It starts with people listening, and then it translates into legislation and laws. And those are things that we can affect here statewide. And there's a lot of layers to those laws. Maybe they're through different police and sheriff laws, protecting victims kind of laws. And those are the things that I want to focus on and try and make a difference for our town.
Thank you. Michael?
All right. Yeah. Just by fate today, and I don't know how it happened, I got a chance to meet Eden, and I got to sit for her with an hour and hear her story and hear what happened. And I'm not here to bash the mayor. I think the thing is with him is that he's got to learn a couple words, and they're called "I'm sorry." And this isn't about bringing up old past histories of women that have to relive this. And, you know, to me, survivors, you know, this is just such a difficult one. It's just hard. And I feel for Eden, I feel for Jessica, I feel for all women. And this is something that, you know, how do I say it? I don't know. I say I give the time on to the answer, and please take time to read important words. And my time is for them. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Devin?
Thank you. I'd like to start by saying that we can all do better and we can all learn more. And the Community Safety Network is actually hosting, I don't know what you call it, an education session next October the 13th from 6 to 7. And it's to teach us how to be a better friend and encourage people that are victims that it's safe, that it's okay, that you can say it. We need to reassure them and not go out of our way to silence them. They need to feel comfortable. So I, for one, will be taking that so that I can learn the correct way to, you know, talk the talk. We can always learn. I think we also have to look at the cause from this and what is it? What are so many of these things about? It's about consent. And so many people don't, there's a huge gray area on what consent means to people. It means something to different, probably each one of us, it's a little bit different. Legal versus ethical consent. We need to educate people. It's not just education in high school, it's educating adults and everyone. And it's making victims feel like it's okay for me to tell my story. Because for me, this is what it felt like to me. Because there are only two people that know the truth in certain situations like this, but it's one person, it's a second person, and then there's the truth. So it's somewhere in the middle. We absolutely cannot use positions of power, though, to make people feel uncomfortable. If anything, we have to go so far on the other side of the spectrum that we are so welcoming and so encouraging and creating these safe spaces for these people, these victims, to come forward and share their stories. So I'll be taking the training next week, and I encourage everyone watching tonight to log on to that too.
Thank you. Jim?
Incredibly complex issue, especially with local politics here. So first of all, I've been a school teacher, administrator, and coach for 25 years. I've worked on Indian reservations, inner cities, alternative high schools, and our local high school. The idea that you know, somebody's just brand new, has never said anything before about it, is it's just untrue. I've reported a lot. I've been in court. I have dozens of kids over the year. And if you know sexual assault on Indian reservations, sometimes it nears 100%. So it's not a new conversation for me. Please keep in mind that in this same Library and League of Women Voters forum in August, when all of us were asked what the #1 health safety issue in this valley was, COVID was the universal answer. I used my red card at that time and specified sexual assault, domestic abuse, and suicide. I appreciate the phrasing to distinguish the difference between victims and survivors, which is subtle but important. The reasons I chose to take a stand last week had nothing to do with politics. I was first during the primaries. I could have the easiest thing for me to do would have been just to stay silent and not say anything. But I have a 14-year-old daughter. I have those dozens of students that I've had and worked with, and I have my family, my friends, my ancestors, and I couldn't look myself in the eye without specifying a rebuke of the mayor's behavior. I absolutely would never say that he is a rapist or he should step down. I just took exception to certain details of the report I read having to do with that. How do we get over it? We fund Health and Human Services, Community Safety Network, Community Counseling Center, the Hirschfield Center, Teton on Youth and Family Services, the Van Vleck House. And finally, I don't think we should stereotype all victims and assume that all victims and survivors feel the same way. Some of them are interested in what I'm interested in, which is accountability for offenders. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe I see Jessica with a red card.
Yes. I would think that given everything that happened last week, that the person that talks about the Constitution would have a greater respect for due process. I think that the most important or most relevant thing that you gentlemen can say right now is I am listening.
Thank you. We'll go on to the next question, which will be asked by Lindsay, and Jessica will be the first person to answer.
Okay. So I wanted to ask about everybody where you think that your biggest weakness lies as a leader, and where do your biases lie?
I need a second to think about that. That is a really tough one. It's not just a policy question. I think maybe one of my biggest weaknesses is it's always a double-sided, right? Passion can be coupled with stubbornness. Determination can be coupled with stubbornness. And I think it's just a matter of how you apply those characteristics in whatever situation that you're in. I think also whenever you look at strengths and weaknesses, it also depends on who's looking at it at what time. I always go back to this thought that we had, or this concept that we had in my international affairs program, which is one person's freedom fighter is another person's terrorist. And, you know, someone like Nelson Mandela was even on a terrorist list. And so I think, you know, that just really reveals how people view strengths and weaknesses of other people differently. And so, I mean, it's really hard to address weaknesses in that regard. And then, Lindsay, I think there was a second part, but I don't recall because I was so stuck on what I was going to say.
Where do your biases lie?
Oh, my biases. My biases, I work really hard on implicit bias and understanding how my filters affect the way that I see the world. And that comes from my lived experiences growing up in the United States as a white woman, definitely not wealthy, but not incredibly poor. I think the most important part for all of us, and this was another thing that was a big focus in my undergraduate program, is understanding how the way that you have lived in this world makes you see the rest of the world, and understanding that my lived experience is not others' lived experiences. So it really is looking at that filter.
Thank you. Haley?
Thank you. I would say one of my weaknesses is I strive for perfection, and that is something, perfection can be a fault in the sense that you want to get everything right. You want to make sure you say it right, and you want to make sure you have all the right things. And I, over the last 8 years as a town councilor, have realized and learned that you don't want to let good or perfection get in the way of the good. And sometimes it's more important when, for example, we're legislating or working as a council to do something and move forward rather than always talking about it and trying to strive for the perfection. And so that's something that I'm always working on. As far as my biases, I grew up here in Wyoming. I grew up middle class, working family, and I'm a white woman. And I recognize all the privilege, or I'm starting to recognize still all the privilege that comes with that. And I think that, that lived experience paints how I view the world, and recognizing that in myself and recognizing that that's not the same for everyone, and to make sure that I know that and to seek out opinions other than my own is really important to me. And that's something that I always have worked on, but even more so in the recent months with what's been happening nationally, and just recognizing that people have lived their entire lives not with the privilege that I've had, and to make sure I know that, and to make sure that that I don't speak for them, that I don't suppose what their experience or what their life has been like, but I ask them, and that I listen, and that I then use that to make decisions moving forward. Thanks.
Thank you. Michael?
Thank you. So my weaknesses are my blind spots. He's back here. And, you make mistakes and you try not to make them again. And you learn from those. You move forward. You turn a negative into a positive. And, your weakness and strengths are not knowing all the answers. May be a weakness, but I don't know, offsetting it into the leading of bringing experts together is a strength of mine. So I'm a big collaborator, and that is one of my huge strengths. And I love listening and bringing a lot of people together during this campaign. That is one thing I've learned about myself. I'm extremely gifted at it, and I didn't even realize it until people start acknowledging it. As for my bias, I think it'd be social bias. When we unwillingly or deliberately give preference to certain individuals, groups, races, sexes, etc., due to stigmatic barriers. So, again, like Haley said it, she nailed it. We were both two who grew up in Wyoming, white male, not hanging out or being around different cultures from huge cities. I had no idea until the city I ever went to was Salt Lake City. I thought this place was crazy. And, just not knowing. But again, you have to listen to people. You got to get to know them and understand them, and you can't judge them at the end of the day. So thank you.
Nice. Devin?
Thank you. So my weakness is that I often come across as, I don't know how to say it, too kind or nice and cute. And, oh, she gets along with everyone. And my close friends know that's not the truth about me. But that is, they say, oh, Devin, she's nice, she's cute, she's kind. Like she's not going to roll her sleeves up and get, make the decisions that need to be made. And I invite you to call any of my close friends, because they know that I'm actually like a little pit bull, kind of, maybe a blonde pit bull when it comes down to it. I think my bias would be that I am I'm super numbers driven. Like that's what I focus on. And I forget that people make decisions with their heart a lot of the time. So that's something that I could work on, is adding a little bit of the heart into the decisions along with the numbers and the data. And my strength is that I can work with nearly anyone. I truly believe that there's common ground to be found with everyone. And I have friends from all walks of life and all political parties, and we have great relationships. And so for me, town council is a good fit because it's a nonpartisan position. And that's really what I am, is I'm a nonpartisan person when it comes to stuff like this. So that's my strength, is I can find common ground with nearly anyone. It's a rare instance where I can't find something that you and I can agree on somewhere and move forward. So thank you.
Thank you. Jim?
Well, thank you. Good question. Hard question to answer. I was thinking I could call my wife, Ruth. I've been married for 20 years this summer. She could definitely answer this question, especially with regards to my weaknesses. I'm a failed, flawed human being, any number of different weaknesses, but specifically with regards to being a public official, I tend to get consumed by my work to the point that it can become non-productive. I'm a teacher. Shout out to all my teaching colleagues out there. Most of us are like this, where you think if you just keep going and keep pushing, you're going to get better, but sometimes it's not the case. Secondly, anyone who knows me know that I'm like way too caught up in the complexities and not the concise simplicity of things. Like I said, with my dad, we were raised to think about the unilateral, multifaceted nature of things. And it's a fair criticism of me that sometimes I need to just shut up and look at it in a very concise, simplistic manner. And lastly, I can be impatient with regards, I'm a very action-oriented person. I don't think words are enough. I want to do something, and sometimes that brings out some impatience with me. My biases, everyone has implicit social biases. In the first second we see people, it's threat, it's attraction, it's identifying the tribalistic nature of humanity. And certainly I grew up in a small Wyoming town. I've since traveled the world and across America. Yeah, that's certainly true. And lastly, I have a bias against a pet peeve of like what I call the My Jackson syndrome. I don't have any patience for people who say, this town's like, my vision for this town should be the vision for everybody. And I tend not to be as open-minded and dialogue and process oriented with folks sometimes, because I react to that thing because I've heard it so much throughout my life. I would love to describe my strengths, but I don't think that was part of the question. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. And Pete?
Thanks, Susan. Biases, I think the important thing for me is that I know that I have them. I try to root them out when I find them, but I have to know that there are, I can't name them, because the ones that are important right now are the ones that I know that I have that I'm not aware of. So I have to keep working on that. As far as weaknesses, it pains me to admit it, because I've always thought of myself as a good listener. And I think probably most of the folks on this forum tonight were watching the council meeting the other night. And that was a really painful moment for me, because that was a moment where I realized I wasn't that good at it. I spent the rest of the evening, I'll be honest, I don't really know what we talked about the rest of that night. And I know what I talked about when I got home. And what I talked about was how, when I was in a moment of I would say existential crisis, and somebody else was telling her story, a story that was important to her, I made that about myself. I didn't listen. I made that story about me. It wasn't even about me. It had nothing to do with me. But I made it about me. I should have just listened. I should have just shut up. I should have said nothing. And that, for somebody that values listening and has thought of himself as somebody who's good at listening. That's really painful. And that's something that I've spent a lot of time over the last couple of days thinking about and talking to people whose opinions I really value about how I could have done that better. And that's something I'm committed to doing better.
Thank you. The next question will come from Tim, and Haley will be first.
All right, sorry, give me 1 second here. Let me get to my list. So over the spring and summer, the council, and therefore me, have spent a lot of time deliberating Snow King and various developments there. We've got a gondola coming. We've got possibly, likely a series of zip lines coming. Things like that were debated thoroughly. So what I would like to know is, it's kind of a two-part question. One, do you support expansion on the Snow King's backside with a new lift and some runs back there? But then also two, what steps would you take to ensure that Snow King remains the quote unquote town hill?
Thank you. And welcome, Tim, to Snow King. This is something that we have been talking about a long time, and rightfully so, because it is the town hill and we all have different visions, but we all find it very near and dear to our hearts. For me, you know, looking at Snow King started 8 years ago, you know, my first year on the town council, and has continued in different iterations since. Some of the things that have been really important to me in the last couple of years and to get for the community was an increase in their housing mitigation. Their 2000 master plan actually had no housing or very minimal housing. And through the negotiations and the discussions and you know, our different public meetings, we were able to increase that significantly. A few other things that were important to me, and from what I've heard from the community as well, is looking at their transportation and how, if Snow King becomes more of a destination, making sure that it's not adding to our traffic problem. For me, the gondola is very exciting, and that's something that I've heard from the community as well. I think about my dad, who is 70, and my kids, who are 4 and 2, and they will never ride to the top of Snow King right now. And I think with a gondola that they'll be able to, and making it more accessible to people, not just the people that can skin up or not just the people that can hike up, but making it truly accessible to our community and to many different levels of abilities is really important to me. And I think something that we will get. And I'm really excited for that. Thank you.
Great. Michael?
No, hang on. Now, can you hear me now? There we go. Okay, Snow King. I grew up here, I came up here as a kid, and I learned how to ski on Snow King. My dad would not let me go to the village until I could literally ski top down. And that mountain, that place has a very special place in my heart. And I'm not sure about off the backside. I need to first understand the unintentional consequences of putting something off the back end of that first. I don't have enough information or data to even answer that question right now. I don't think anyone here can. I'm afraid to get, I'm just not afraid to get in a room and discuss that with Snow King. I'm not going to fault the council on this. I think they did the best they could. I know a lot of citizens aren't happy with the outcome. They should have got more from Snow King. I think they did pretty good. I mean, I maybe would have asked for a little bit more on leasing agreements and stuff like that. But again, I'm not going to fault them. They did what they thought they did. Jim Stanford was obviously the main person who didn't fight it, but was the voice that really stood up for this community in that aspect. So I can say I don't know the pros and cons. I don't know if I will ever in the future develop the consequence I'll approach it with a team approach. And whoever I serve on this council with, 5 play the game and 3 will make the rules, and we will move it forward in a timely, efficient manner.
Great. Devin?
Thank you. So Snow King, last winter when I decided to run for office and people asked me about Snow King, I said, oh, well, my hope for Snow King is that they're done talking about it by the time I get into office, which is laughable because are we ever going to be done talking about it? I'm not really sure. But in all seriousness, expansion, it is the town hill. I learned to ski there. My child learned to ski there. If you learn to ski there, you can ski anywhere, I think. It is important to make it more accessible to everyone in the community, though. And it's also important to be mindful of what that expansion means. So it's important because, people want more from it. They see all this potential with Snow King. And I think that a great middle ground will be found, and the town is already on their way there to doing it. With regards to expanding off the back, I've actually talked to some of the conservation groups in town about this and what it means to wildlife. And for me, I have a concern with expanding over the back of it just because of the impact that it'll have on wildlife, but that's certainly something that I'm learning more about and I'll continue to educate myself on. The homeowners around Snow King, I hear from them. They don't want to have it turned into an amusement park. It already is a lot louder, my mom passed away, as I've mentioned, and we picked out a spot for her up at Aspen Cemetery. Well, when we picked it out, it was this beautiful, quiet spot with the views of the Tetons. And now when we go up there, you have to pick the time of day that you go because it's really lots of screaming and fun. And I'm all for that stuff, but we also have to be mindful of the people that live there around it and what other enjoyment of the area means to different people. So I think the town's done a great job with getting there, and I think the end result will be great. Thanks.
Thank you. Jim?
Oh, Snow King, I got a lot of history there. So let's see. I was born in 1971. I remember when they helicoptered in the new Summit lift to replace the old Summit lift. I remember the rope tows there. I remember the Galande and hucking down in. If you remember, it goes down into the pit, and sometimes you didn't come up, and everyone knew that somebody was dusted down there. I have tons of family members buried in the Aspen Cemetery. And I remember being frostbitten several times on Snow King. So that's the history. I want to honor the process. I've listened to it for years and years. I applaud the town council and the gadfly, the Socratic gadfly, Jimmy Stanford. I know he's a controversial figure, but I've appreciated his consistency to just, you know where he stands. I've also had dinner with Max Chapman several months ago at an event, and appreciate what they're trying to do. And I think the council has gotten it right. I do not support development on the backside of Snow King. I do not support east or west development on Snow King. I think that we've spent almost a decade getting to the point where we are today. I think it's very premature to talk about any of that right now. Let's just ensure that what's been decided upon gets done properly and with accountability. I am a homeowner. I live on Flat Creek Drive, Pine Drive group, and all of those things affect me as well. But I have to say that I love the accessibility for the elderly, for my kids. I think that a planetarium up top, I'm meeting with Samuel Singer with Wyoming Stargazers next week on behalf of another initiative. I think there's some tremendous potential. And the irony is that everyone always talked about what Snow King could be, and it's becoming that, and it's controversial. We would definitely have accepted a gondola in the 70s and 80s, I can tell you that. I think it's a give and get. I think it's no different than the Gills or anybody else who's coming to the table and developing is, and just like the Gills, there's tremendous community benefit here. Long live Snow King. Thank you.
Thank you. Pete, your turn.
Susan, yeah, as Haley mentioned, I've been talking about Snow King the entire 4 years that I've been in office, and I know we're not done yet. I think, for me, the big thing is that there's no easy takeaways here. We had a very long process that predated when I was in office. We had multiple interests, multiple stakeholders to balance. We had multiple elected officials working on this for a very long time, and we knew that eventually we were going to have to say yes. We needed to move this forward, and we did. When we said yes, we knew that there were going to be people that were going to find something in there that they didn't like. There was no way to avoid that, and people have, and that was expected. And I think we could have tried to push this off so that we wouldn't have to take any of that criticism, but we needed to get it done. And I'm proud of the council for getting through that. It was a long process. I'm sure Haley is even happier about having gotten as far as we have at this point. It was tough, but I think we got there, and we did a good job. I personally prioritized housing for the community throughout that process. It didn't mean I didn't care about anything else, but I wanted to make sure that we had the housing and the mitigation requirements met the mitigation requirements in town, so that we could make sure that their employees had a place to live. Accessibility. One thing we talked about as we wrapped up our discussion was, how can you ensure that it's affordable? And that's a really difficult question. This is a private company that owns a ski area. We really can't dictate to them the terms of how they operate their business. But one idea that came up was that I would like to keep looking at and more into is accessibility for folks that really can't afford it, and especially people from within our Latinx community who need an opportunity to get there. We know that the Combs Foundation is doing a lot of great work there. I would like to see us try to sponsor some discounted passes for folks and maybe doing it through them and through 122 to make sure that the public is putting that money in and the public is valuing those folks and allowing them to have that kind of access.
Terrific. And Jessica?
Since we're all sharing our friendly Snow King stories, my son, that was the first hill that he skied on in a backpack, actually, which I think some people thought I was a little crazy with that ice, but nevertheless, that's what we did. And from that point, personally, we've often not gone to Snow King just because of the cold and the lack of speed with which you can get to the top of the mountain. Like Haley was saying about her kids and her dad, it's just too cold. And so I was definitely one of the people that were excited about the gondola. As far as expanding off of the backside, I don't know how many of those planning workshops I've been to. There was a big listening session down at the convention center. We had guys in bighorn sheep costumes. It was like a very contentious, you guys remember this, I see some of you. It was a very contentious and very big hearing. It lasted forever because people feel so strongly about Snow King. But I think the general consensus was, as Devin said, the noise. If we were to do anything on the front of the hill, it's already really loud. But then anything that there is conflict with wildlife, which is expanding in any direction from where the current boundaries are, that's kind of one of my biggest concerns. Is just we have already occupied this valley and blocked migration corridors and everything else. I think that we should leave the exterior alone and make sure that we protect our wildlife. Things like the fireworks already upset the wildlife on the hill. And so I think that we just need to be very cognizant and careful and considerate when we're talking about the effects that we have on that aspect of our town hill if we expand it.
Thank you. The evening is flying by and we have had wonderful conversations. We have time for one more question, our last question, which Robin will ask and Michael will answer first.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Jackson has a representation problem. 0 members of the Latinx community sit on town council or the county commission, and each of those bodies only has 1 woman. What actionable steps will you take to ensure members of underrepresented communities are heard and adequately represented?
Great question, Robin. In my time now out canvassing and meeting and talking on doors, I've made an honest effort and an extremely huge effort to communicate and get to know the 30% of our Hispanic community. I have a renter here who has introduced me to multiple friends, colleagues of his. Obviously, I do not speak Spanish very well, poco, but I think I'm making a connection. I'm really trying to see if the Latin community or the Hispanic community will step up and show us who their leaders are and take a seat at the table. I mean, in 4 years from now, I would love to say that there's someone out there that wants to run, whether they're male, female, black, white, Hispanic, it doesn't matter. It's not about a race thing for me. It's about who is fit, who has the calling, who wants to serve. And it comes from here, your heart. You want to do this job. And it's about wanting to serve this community, communicating with them, and being open to it. And having 2 daughters growing up, I want to set the example for them that they can do anything they want. And they look at me and they're like, why do all women need to be in politics? I'm like, well, that's what some people want. They really want to see more women. Definitely, I would love to see my 2 daughters follow in my footsteps someday and want to be on town council or run for political office. But to me, it's about getting involved. It's about learning. It's about listening even more. I think Jessica said it right, that we all need to listen more, and Mayor nailed it too. And I look forward to bridging that gap with our Hispanic community. Thank you.
Terrific. Devin?
So here's the deal. I have not experienced as much sexism and barriers in any aspect of my life until I decided to run for public office. So if me, a white privileged woman, is second guessing putting my name in the ring for this because of the way I've been attacked, the way I've been treated, I don't even know how to explain it. It has blown my mind the whole time. That's the first step, is we've got to get leadership in office that welcomes people, not ones that when you send a public comment in that's well thought out, that's well written, that has facts, that you don't get back nasty, derogatory emails that attack your personal character when it has nothing to do with that. So that's the first step, is getting people in office that are willing to listen, that are willing to ask everyone to come and speak and be heard. And I'm pretty fired up about this one. Like, I'm not going to actually curse, but damn it, you're never going to hear me make fun of you for having a different opinion than me. I'm going to hear you out, and maybe I might actually learn something from you that changes who I am. So that's the first step, is getting people in office that will welcome that. I also have to say that there's a language barrier going on, and I would love to see the town council meetings translated so that more people can understand what's going on and be invited to participate. Because quite frankly, I'm a pretty tough lady, and if I don't feel comfortable going in there, you tell me who else does. Like, it's tough. So that's where I stand on that, is we've got to change the systemic problems that we have going on before anything else can get better. And I'm out of time, but I'd keep going on this one.
Thank you. Jim?
So first and foremost, I don't believe in social engineering or election engineering. Everybody can run. It's not fun for any of us. I appreciate what Devin just said. It's been tough. I thought I had thick skin when I came into this endeavor, but it's getting thicker by the day. Let's see. That being said, I think there was a 1920 all-women's town council in Jackson. I think this town has a long history of supporting the best person for the job, regardless of all other issues. I think of Genevieve Van Vleck, my great-grandmother. I think of Clarine Law, who's one of my personal heroes. In the modern cadre, I can tell you, I think I read Jen Ford's editorial piece today in the newspaper. I just think she's an incredible bright star. I think Jen Simon is amazing. I think Daniela Peterson is just an extraordinary lady. And then some young kids. I have a bunch of students, forgive me for my preference, Cynthia Benavides, Jamie Vargas, and America Martinez. America needs to be president of the United States, not just on the town council, and as well as some of those other ladies. But listen, we cannot oversee that Natalia Macker is an extraordinary leader, the chair of the Teton County Commission, and has led with brilliance. I really appreciate Haley's leadership. I think Devin is outstanding. I really appreciate everything that she's done, and she's run an outstanding campaign. I think of people like Melissa Turley, and everyone should try to get my sister, Michelle Rooks, to run. And we need more women. We need more diversity. We need more people who want to dive into politics. It's not fun. It's not easy. It's not just a gender, a race issue or class issue. It's tough to make a decision to kind of call a timeout on your life and dedicate yourself to civil service. That's always been the case. It's always politics is nasty. I think tonight's an outstanding example of us all keeping it above the fray. But it's tough. It's a tough business because we all care so much about very difficult, complex issues. So thanks for an outstanding question. Thank you.
Thank you. Pete?
Thanks, Susan. First, I would say I don't think we have a good history in Jackson. I think we have a terrible history. I am trying to think of a Latinx community member who's ever been elected to office, and I can't think of one. And in the 20 years I've been here, I've seen a handful of women elected. I've seen mostly our town council and our county commissioners and our leadership from this county be older white men. It's bad. It's a terrible history. This is a hard question for me. I do think that experience matters. I think that there are other things that matter, but I will say that, I came home from the meeting on Monday night, and I sat at home for a while thinking to myself about whether I am the right person for this. Does that experience and what I bring, does that overcome my failure to listen to somebody and to understand their experience? I don't know. And I don't have anything else to say except that we got to acknowledge that. It's important. We're failing at it. I don't even have a good answer to myself about that, to be honest. But I'll stop and let someone else talk about it.
Thank you. And Jessica?
Thank you. So I'm so happy that we talked about the All Women's Town Council a century ago. A century ago, that was the only time in 100 years that we have had an all-female council. And you know what those ladies did? They stepped up and they did the job that the men didn't want to do. They balanced the budget, they caught a savings, they cleaned up the town, and they managed to get everything back in order. And I think that tells you something, that it's time for an all-women council again, or as close as we can possibly get. To talk about the representation that we have not had adequate representation. When I looked at the numbers, in the last 15 years, we have capped at 23% woman representation. Now, I would like to address this conversation that I had with Jonathan Schechter, which some people view as electioneering or whatever. One, I came under a lot of heat. I got raked through the mud on this situation. And I'm going to pose the question, if I were a man, if Mary Erickson were a man, would we be having this same kind of discussion about the conversation we had with Jonathan Schechter? The conversation was about representation and the lack of it. It was about having different standards, double standards, obstacles, and barriers that women and people of color have to getting to office. And I can't think of a more apropos situation about obstacles and barriers than this situation that I'm currently in, having to defend myself for having a conversation, a constituent having a conversation with an elected about a really important topic, so important that we're talking about it right now. And people are not trusting me when I say that this is the conversation we are having. I have said all I can say. I have had people literally yell at me on the phone, rake me through the mud in the comments, and the only person who can redeem me here is Jonathan Schechter, a white male. When he steps up and lets everybody know that this conversation was what it was, that's all I've got. I can't say anymore to redeem myself. That is an obstacle. That is a barrier. That is a double standard.
Thank you. And Haley.
Thank you. You know, it's hard to imagine yourself in a position if you've never seen someone like you in that position. And that's why representation matters. That's why we need to have more diversity on every level of government, in business, in pretty much every sector of society. On days that it's really hard to do this job and I wonder why I still do it, I think about that. And it's been lonely, to be honest, to be the only woman, because other people, my colleagues, do not live the same experience as me, and they do not understand the same experience as me. And so for that, we need to work hard to focus and have representation. Ways that we do that is asking women or members of the Latinx community to do so. And you don't ask them once, you ask them many, many times, and give a lot of encouragement, because the barriers to entry are more for those that are not white men. And I think building, it's also not thinking, oh, I have my Latinx person over here, I've got my woman over here, I have my whatever over here. You need to build relationships with people and encourage them and bring them up through the different ranks, so that people feel confident. They know that they have the experience without having to just jump right into town council. I always joke that I was 26 when I first ran and was elected. And I think because I didn't know any better, I did it. If I still question sometimes why I do it now, but it's for conversations like this that it really matters to me. And that's why I serve and want to continue.
Thank you. Well, we're moving on to the final phase of the evening. We're going to wrap up by giving each candidate 2 minutes to share their key points. We'll start with the 4 candidates that are running for the town council, and Devin will go first.
Sorry. So I'm just going to pose a question kind of to all the guys. Like, everyone seems to agree that we need gender parity and that we need more representation. Well, here I am, a strong, qualified female candidate. Like, why are you running? I mean, I'm just joking, but anyway. For me, I'm committed to being transparent. I'm committed to explaining my stances and listening to everyone, whether I agree with you or not. I'm going to listen to you because I'll probably learn something from you, and we'll probably find common ground somewhere. I believe that to have trust given to me, I have to be trustworthy, which is absolutely what I will be as your town councilwoman. To create unity in our community, you have to be unifying, which is, I think, what I've proven throughout this campaign process, that, you know, it's not always easy to take the high road. There's not much traffic up there, quite frankly, and it's hard. You know, the mudslinging and all that. Like, I want to get down and dirty with everybody else, but that's not who I am. I want to be able to put my head on the pillow and go to sleep every night and know that I did the right thing. And that's super important to me. To create civility, you have to be civil to each other, and you have to be civil to our community members. And quite honestly, those are qualities that I have not seen in all of our leadership in town. And I want to be the change that I expect to see in our community. So here I am, stepping up, asking for a seat at the table, saying, I'm going to do these things, And I promise that to you, Jackson. So thank you all for tonight. It was really lovely.
Thank you. Jim?
Thanks, Devin, for running. I voted for you, and I really support your candidacy, and I look forward to perhaps working with you. My platform has been the same maybe since I was 10 years old: land, water, and wildlife. Our ancestors made a sacred oath to the earth, and we need to uphold that oath. Unlimited development, unlimited tourism has to stop. I'm not talking about unfair, unlimited government intrusion. I'm just talking about the fact that we all know why we love and live in Jackson, and we need to protect what is most precious. Secondly, housing, transportation. We all know, I mean, one bridge goes down, one fender bender, and the entire valley is at a standstill, is paralyzed. And so we know we need to invest in housing. The 65% rate seemed high at the time, but we can meet that rate. And we can house 65% of our workers. We can improve and invest into transportation. We can support the Start Buses 2.0 revision. They're doing amazing work there. We can move forward. And lastly, health and human services, investing in the people. The people have always been what's unique about Jackson. I think we need to look at education, our young people. We got to take care of our elders and listen to the wisdom that they can pass down to us. We need to look at what it means to be a person here. Jackson's been described as a bipolar community at times. We're an extreme community. We need to take care of one another, whether that's sexual assault, whether that's mental health, whether that's suicide, whether that's education. And I just please ask for your vote on November 3rd or sooner. My name is Jim Rooks. I think I was born to do this. Thank you so much for the league and the library and all the other organizations for sponsoring this outstanding evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Pete, you're next.
Thanks, Susan. The topic I think we really needed to talk about tonight, and one of the reasons that I am still running in this race, is catastrophic climate change. It's an existential threat to our community, to our nation, and to all of humanity. We can't sugarcoat this anymore. We can't continue to pretend that we're fixing this disaster when in fact it gets worse every single day. We're not going to solve this problem with individual consumer choices by pretending that the free market's going to magically solve it, or even with the necessary but insufficient daily sacrifices that so many members of our community make. We need big, bold, and meaningful policy changes, and that can only come from our government. That means it's essential that we have elected officials who will lead on this issue rather than just pay it lip service while avoiding hard decisions. I've shown I will make those decisions. We've got a real opportunity here and I think a responsibility to lead the world in climate change in Jackson. We have a world famous history of ecosystem stewardship. We live in a state with 2 senators for every 500,000 people rather than 2 for every 38 million like California does. Wyoming's at the center of the energy universe, and we're going to see the impacts hit us here really hard. People watch what we do in Jackson, and we cannot afford to send the world the message that falling further and further behind on our own modest carbon emission goals is acceptable. It's not, and we have to do better. And I think that is the most important issue that faces humanity, and it's the most important issue that we as a town need to address, and I'm committed to doing that. The last thing I want to say is that I know we all know that the COVID-19 pandemic is coming back. It's becoming dire here in Teton County. We're back to the highest risk level. We've got widespread transmission of the disease within our community. We're maxing out our contact tracing capabilities. Our public health officers told us we're seeing alarming increases in new records daily in new cases and current active cases. I know that we're all fatigued, and I know this year has been really hard, but we've got to make some progress here. I know we talked about this early. This isn't a campaign pitch. It's just, I talked to Paul Beaupre and Travis Riddell the other day. They know we need to do something, and I'm going to stop now, but I hope everybody takes that to heart.
Thank you. And Jessica?
Thanks. I would have to echo what Mayor Muldoon said about climate change, but he covered it really well. So I'm going to move on to something different. I also am concerned about COVID. And I think, I had a conversation with Larry Pardee and Roxanne Robinson, where Larry asked me, like, what would you like to accomplish after, your first term of 4 years? And I just said to Larry, I was like, I don't think that's not a relevant conversation anymore, because we have got to get through the next 4 years however we possibly can. And so that's predominantly my focus. And the only way that we're going to do an effective job at that is through effective teamwork with the council. And I am more than willing and able to have hard conversations and work with people that don't see eye to eye with me. In fact, Devin and I have actually become quite good friends, and we go out and door knock together. And people ask us, wait, you guys are running against each other and you're door knocking? And we say, yeah, we really like each other's company. We don't have the same political views on everything, but it's important for us to work together. And so I think that in these situations, maybe it's a woman thing again, but we put our money where our mouths are, and we've already proven that we can work together and we will work together. And I don't think everyone has demonstrated that kind of commitment to open dialogue and working with each other. Recently, this was kind of a sad moment, and with all of the tumult of the last week, a woman put up a post talking about my life experience and how some of my decisions that I make come from a place of extreme pain and very trauma from the loss of my mother, father, brother. And I thought about it, and my experience is my loss. They've informed who I am, and they've made me stronger. They've made me realize that we are all unified. We're a community, and that we need each other. And all of that loss has not impaired me in any way. It's empowered me.
Thank you. Now we'll hear from the two candidates who are running for mayor. Haley?
I just have to joke first that Michael has had the last position for this is the third forum now. And I know it's random, but.
Luck.
Yes.
It's luck.
Yeah. But with that, thank you for tonight. I'll admit I was a little bit nervous going into this evening, but I think that the conversation that we had among all the candidates has been really, really nice, and nice to see all of you in this setting. And, for me, there are days and weeks that make being in the public eye really hard. And I wonder why I do it. But then I look at my kids, I look at my neighbors, and I look at my community, and I remember that this is why I give back to a town that has given me so much, and to represent a voice that is otherwise not at the table. What makes Jackson special is its people. And that's what I've always put forward first in my 8 years on council. It's our small businesses, it's our working individuals and families, it's our educators, and it's those in the service industry. This is what I have in mind when I'm leading on the council and when I'm thinking about my decisions. As mayor, I will be prioritizing small businesses, economic recovery, early childhood education, equality and diversity, and reducing our carbon footprint. Each of these elements is essential to supporting our working class and ensuring Jackson's thriving and healthy future for my kids and for our kids and the next generations. Over the last 8 years, I have been honest, thoughtful, caring, and decisive. We have a lot of serious issues facing our community, and we need to be looking to our future. Recognizing the shortfalls we face from the current pandemic is really important, and not losing sight of that is key. Thank you.
Thank you. And Michael?
Thank you for that commentary. I first want to thank the League of Women Voters, K-Hole, Jacksonians and Guy, everyone else involved in this. I want to thank everyone, all the candidates tonight for stepping up and putting your name in the hat. This is not easy, and it has been a very stressful couple of last 2 weeks. I think COVID has a lot to do with that. But I have 3 priorities as your future mayor, and it is public safety, it is fire EMS, law enforcement, and public health and first responders. Those are the things that are going to matter to me at the end of the day. And to do that, we have to have the right size human services for the resources. We have to have the right government size for the growth that we're going to have, or the recession that we're going to have. Because we have to live within our means. It's time to live within our means and use that tax dollar wisely, because it's not ours. It's the citizens that vote us and put us into office, and we owe them that respect. Whether we have a seventh penny or not, doesn't matter. We have to respect that. And at the end of the day, this is about common sense leadership for me. And it's not a slogan. It's what I will stand by. And it's bringing balance, like I said, to Jackson Hole. I want to promote the health and safety of this community. I want to be a voice for this community. I want to be the face for this community. I want to be out there bringing people together, not tearing them apart and being diversified or divisive. Those times have to end. That kind of leadership has to end, and it's time for change. I commend our current council and everything they've done and tried to do, but it's time to get this way. It's time to be balanced. Right now we're like this, and it's not healthy, and it has a lot to do the last year and a half. And it's time to bring in new leaders. I will be voting for Devin and Rooks wholeheartedly. I look forward to serving with them, and I look forward to being your next mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. What an interesting evening tonight. Thank you to everyone for joining us to meet the candidates who are running for the town council and mayor of Jackson Hole. I know that all of us have gained better insight because we participated this evening. I want to give kudos to all of the candidates for your dedication to our community. It shines through in everything that you do. And thank you for your thoughtful consideration and comments this evening. You provided us with important information so that we can become better informed voters. I'm much obliged to the media panel for their insightful questions and to the entire forum team for putting this on tonight. The League of Women Voters, the Teton County Library, KHOL, Wildfile, Jackson News and Guide, and Buck Rail. And finally, I really want to say thank you to you, our audience, because you're striving to become better informed voters. You make a difference. So remember to vote, either absentee, by mail, or in person at our official polling places. And if you're interested in nonpartisan politics and improving voter awareness, come join us at the League of Women Voters. And you don't have to be a woman. So thank you for your attention and your caring about our community. Stay safe and healthy. Good night. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.